This is hands down the most egotistical, narcissistic, unhinged rant I've ever heard.
Of course, it's easy to say, tax is bad.
I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you like this type of content, it'll help us get to more eyes and ears when you do. Also, like the video and comment your thoughts down below. Now, I know that people do not like listening to Justin Trudeau speak. I'm one of those people. However, this is so vitally important, and I promise you I will be chiming in an awful lot to try to break up how unbelievably and unbearably condescending he has become.
Given that the Liberal Party didn't do very well in Nova Scotia in the most recent election, what does that tell you about the current voter thinking about the carbon tax?
It says a lot about the disconnect between what people perceive of as good policy versus what they perceive of as good politics. There are lots of things out there that seem very, very popular to do politically, and people are falling over themselves to try and do them. And we only need to look south of the border to know that very popular policy is sometimes not very good policy.
Not good policy according to who? The people who voted you in, or your own bank account? Because I'm just going to throw this out there. The United States economy was significantly better. Their safety and security was significantly better under Donald Trump. And they got swayed by the fear-mongering that you're trying to do right now, where they had a Democratic Party in for the last 4 years. And they went right back to Donald Trump, where he also won popular vote. Not to mention, Justin Trudeau is not a good friend of Donald Trump's right now at all, with all of these tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, all these things that would be terrible for both of our economies. It's no surprise to me why Donald Trump posted just last night, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all." Yeah, I don't actually think that Donald Trump is joking, like Trudeau likes to say. It's clear that Donald Trump does not trust him. He thinks he's two-faced. And for Justin Trudeau to continuously be mocking Donald Trump, mocking conservatives, insulting them, really, since his first meeting with Trump is not a good look. And boy, oh boy, I understand how the ego works quite well, but you should really try to keep that in check when you're dealing with something as serious as the livelihood of the people who you rule over, especially the people that actually don't want you in. You shouldn't even really be a party. Your minority government is so sad. The fact that he is even able to have any say at this point is just beyond me.
We know, we're here for some of the extreme weather events, whether it's fires or more intense hurricanes that you've had over the past few years. We know that there is an absolute unavoidable cost around climate change.
Is there really? I would think actually the unavoidable cost, let's use Jasper as an example, would be Stephen Guilbeault, who refused to let in several fire trucks that were ready to go to help put it out. The extreme cost would be Trudeau not funding our first responders adequately, not clearing out the bush as they were instructed to do and encouraged to do for years prior to that fire. I'm quite positive that taxing your citizens is actually not going to change the environment at all. Sure, the earth has patterns. The climate does change. Sometimes that can be catastrophic. Other times it's not. What we have seen, though, from the people, the globalist WEFs, who have been pushing this narrative, is that every single one of their predictions has been false. We were supposed to be in an ice age in the 2000s. People were supposed to be starving to death by the 1990s. None of that has come true. First, they were telling us, it's global warming. And I just read an article last week saying that another ice age is actually in the works. None of it is credible or true. And taxing your citizens is not going to fix anything. If you want to be green and to convince your population into poverty, maybe you should not try to do that in a country like Canada, which has such a massive forest, which emits less than 1.5% of global emissions. Maybe that would be a good start. Maybe the WEF needs to get, China and India on board if they want to start pushing that narrative and actually see people panic, because you have numbers that can back up the fear, even though the fear itself is still useless.
The shifts in our global ecosystems that are going to come and make everything harder for everyone over the coming decades. We know that reducing our emissions is an essential part of making sure that future generations only face the kind of extreme weather events we're living now, not things that are 5 times or 10 times worse than what we live now. That's the future we're looking at right now.
No, it's not. There's actually zero way to predict that whatsoever. And as I said, they have tried to do that before and failed every single time. This is fear-mongering at its finest.
But every time we talk about fighting climate change, people say, this is something that's going to make a difference a decade from now or 2 decades from now, and I can't pay for groceries right now. I'm worried about paying my rent right now. I'm worried about my kids' future now.
Yeah, Trudeau, bingo. Bingo, bango, ready to go. Because, if it makes you poor, you can't focus on climate change. Want to get rid of climate change? Increase the wealth of the world, and then people can focus on climate change. You cannot focus on something that you cannot see, feel, hear, or predict that's maybe going to happen decades from now based on whose opinion? Yours and the scientists that you have paid off to back this narrative? Like, really, whose opinion is it? If this was a common sense thing that we all knew was happening and we could all experience it and see it, why is it only that the wealthiest people in the world, many of whom have investments in the types of technology that they are trying to promote globally, why is it only those guys who are sounding the alarm? That sounds an awful lot like corruption to me.
And next week, not 20 years from now. It'd be nice if we could do things for 20 years from now, but I need help right now. That's not a new way of thinking. That didn't get invented in the last provincial election. That's been at the core of the challenge of fighting climate change for decades.
And just to keep you aware, the price per ton is set to increase by $170 per ton in 2030. That's not that far away. Could you imagine imagine the truckers, right? Farmers who are trying to use their equipment to feed us, going to work every day. Imagine what that is going to look like on your bill when we are already struggling. Not only is there this massive increase in cost for climate change to reduce our emissions, of which we have very few, but those weather patterns that farmers especially have been dealing with since the beginning of time are still going to be there. You're still going to have seasons where, maybe there's droughts, maybe it's a really wet season, maybe your crops aren't growing, maybe there's an infestation of some sort of bugs that you still have to pay for in order to keep your farm operating properly. Only now you're dealing with the exact same challenges that the weather that's unpredictable can bring, on top of having to pay more to deal with those challenges so that people don't die and you can still feed the world and fuel our economy.
Stop. Exactly. Just stop. In the name of God, stop the inflationary spending. Stop doubling debt. Stop. That's right. Driving up taxes on starving Canadians. Stop everything you're doing.
The average lifespan is 69 years for men, 74, 75-ish for women. So why on earth would anybody be okay with sacrificing the best possible life that they could live to save the climate when all of your predictions have been false? And when we know that the best way to improve the climate is to improve the wealth of the world, because people who are starving to death and freezing to death and dealing with all sorts of infections and diseases, they don't care about the climate. And those are the countries that are emitting the absolute most. So again, if you wanted to implement something like this and have it work, you should probably get those guys on board, because we don't have a long life. Why would we be okay with sacrificing our life that we work so damn hard for to pay your bills, Justin Trudeau? And you know, if climate change was really such a disastrous thing, why on earth is it that the world has continued to get more advanced? Why is it that the world has continued to live longer? If there was this massive thing that was going to wipe us all out for the last couple of decades that still hasn't happened, to find yourself in poverty, to find yourself forced, dependent on the government because they are pushing you into this hole that you don't actually need to be in. Is the climate going to change? Absolutely. And the world will adapt, as it always has. But I can absolutely assure you that living a life that is less worth living because of all of these radical extremist ideas, not backed in fact, it's backed in speculation. And in fact, there have been dozens and dozens of Congress hearings in the United States, of testimony here in Canada as well, where these environmentalists have been absolutely stumped and are completely unable to answer the question of, okay, so we go and give you these trillions of dollars, how does that fix anything? And they don't have an answer. They don't actually know what the prediction will be, because there's no way to predict the environment. We could be taken out by a solar flare in a second. Why don't we just focus on making the world more wealthy so that we can then pay attention to these things if they do in fact matter so much, versus making the middle class poor and the people who are living in poverty already, a sacrificial element to the gods of the weather, just like they did back in the Mayan days. Cheap energy, that is the best way to move the world forward, not more expensive energy. And as I often say, I'll take it seriously when you do, buddy. You're a leader. You're supposed to be leading by example, aren't you? Why aren't you?
And that will encourage people to innovate, to think of ways that work for them to reduce their emissions, to create new business models, to be competitive against your neighbors who are continuing to pollute when you clean up.
Oh, there's another one from the Communism Handbook. You want to make people spy on their neighbors now. I thought you didn't want division, Justin Trudeau. It's weird that you want people to spy on their neighbors and criticize their neighbors for not doing as much as them. That sounds very, very divisive. I thought the Conservatives were the only ones trying to divide Canadians.
Even if it costs you a little more to clean up, because it levels the playing field. A price on pollution is the best way and most efficient way, market-based way to fight climate change.
Weird, because the lie detector test has determined that was a lie, and the public budget officer themselves have said that nope, that's actually not really doing anything. There's also been a lot of people testifying, as I said previously, that have also said, yep, it's not really doing anything. If people have to choose between heating their home in the wintertime or dying, they're going to choose heating their home. Duh.
And if you make a decision that reduces the amount of fuel you have to buy, you get a heat pump, for example, where there's a great program to get heat pumps that we're doing across Atlantic Canada.
Heat pumps provided by Mark Carney, the Liberal advisor. His company, the billionaire Mark Carney, who has made his riches in the oil sector, who pulled out his billion-dollar company from Canada because the taxes were too high, and he is now setting up shop in New York where the taxes are lower. Man, corruption.
Of course, it's easy to say, taxes bad. Sorry, I don't know why I sounded like Frankenstein when I was doing that, but okay. Fire bad. But having conversations about how we actually solve the challenges we're facing in this world in thoughtful ways, how we reduce our emissions and support hardworking families, that's a more complex answer than my opponents actually want you to have, want you to actually reflect on. And I remain confident that if Canadians really understand that there is a clear choice to be made about the kind of country we want to live in, Do we bring everything we're doing to fight climate change to a screeching halt? Because that's what's on offer from the Conservatives. No plan to fight climate change. I wonder how many people will actually choose that. Because right now, however unpopular it may seem, our price on pollution is part of the most successful plan to fight climate change that is bending the curve on our emissions faster than any of our peer countries.
Nope, that's false. In fact, Canada's emissions only saw a decrease during the pandemic when they locked us all up and quickly shot back up to pre-pandemic levels ever since, where they have not actually decreased really at all. And actually, even for the decrease during the pandemic, it was only by approximately 4%. So that's nothing. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is all the extra money worth it for a decrease of 4%? That happened over a period of us being locked in our homes, unable to travel, unable to visit family, unable to go out, unable to live? Was it worth it? That is the question I leave you with today. Canada is significantly off track to meet any of our Paris Agreement targets. We're off track to meet any of our climate targets that have been put in place. The carbon tax is actually not working. It's just making life harder and more expensive, and that number is continuing to go up. So yeah, pretty sure a lot of people are going to be voting for the opposition who does not plan to tax us into poverty, just like Justin Trudeau wants to do to fight his climate change while he flies on his private jets across the globe to talk about it. Alrighty then. I'm Jasmine Lane. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video, subscribe, comment down below, and I will talk to you tomorrow.